Welcome to Be the Good with Kate, the show where guests leave you inspired to uncover your passions and discover tangible ways to make a difference along the way. I'm your host, Kate Chericello-Tente, and here I talk to individuals who are doing just that. Individuals from all walks of life and industries following their passions and making the world a better place while they do. With guests hailing from Bali to Utah, Florida to Japan, and just about everywhere in between, something I love about human connection and inspiration is how you certainly don't need to be from the same place or a similar background to get so much out of hearing from a person. In fact, I think it is better that way. We notice how we as humans are so similar in so many ways, and how each of us has so much power to make a difference in our own lives and the lives of others. I hope you're inspired here to start, restart, or continue your journey of finding your passions and helping others along the way. I love a text saying, "This made me think of you today." If there is someone in your life who could use today's story, click share and send their way. And thank you for helping to inspire more people. Now onto this week's episode. Let's spread a little more goodness in the world. Welcome back to Be the Good with Kate. Today, I am so happy to introduce you to Abigail Griebelbauer. She is located in Indianapolis. She is half of the Passage Press, and she is a children's book author who also happens to be dyslexic. She's channeled these challenges into the work she does now, and she has 3 books, part of, I love this, the Empower Empathy Early series. That's all I'm going to say right now because I want her to tell you the rest. But Abigail, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So please tell us a little bit more about what it is you do as a children's book author right now.
Yeah, so right now I do have 3. 2 of them are part of the Empower Empathy Early. The third one for that series hasn't come out. The other book is kind of a holiday offset book. But the first one came about it was COVID and I was substitute teaching at the time and I didn't know what is there to do because you don't need a sub when everything is virtual. So I was like, I knew that there's not a lot of children's books about dyslexia, and I really wanted to change that and start conversations early with kids. And I felt like one of the best ways to start those conversations was through a children's book. And that's kind of what sparked the entire idea. And then my best friend who illustrates the stories is just this phenomenal artist. And I knew immediately that she was going to be the one I was going to work with to make this happen.
Oh, that's so great. And I love the name D is for Darcy, not dyslexia. And then the second one, right, is A is for Anthony. Yes, not ADHD, right?
Exactly.
Now, are Darcy and Anthony, just side question, real people or just the fictional characters?
Good question. So Darcy is a little bit like based off of me and a little bit of the illustrator as well, because her creativity and like her art kind of comes from her. And then obviously her real life experiences of dyslexia is kind of how it felt going through school for me. And then for Anthony, I definitely like both of the books. I do a ton of research before writing on any topic. But for Anthony specifically, I wanted to add a little bit of theater into it because I was a theater kid growing up. I loved being a part of shows and stuff like that. So that was like an element that I definitely wanted to include in Anthony. So it's all little pieces of real life mixed in with the fictional stories.
Well, very timely too, because 2 weeks prior to this episode airing, there will have just been the Theater Kid episode. And a couple weeks prior to that, the guest Danielle Fette, she runs Fette, which is a whole company about regenerative medicine. Woo, tongue twister today. But she also has dyslexia. So you are bringing these themes together here for sure. And I think it's so fantastic what you've done and what you've already done at a really young age as well. So please tell us a little bit more about that path. And you can go all the way back to, I think it was 2nd grade, right? When you were diagnosed with dyslexia?
Yeah, so I did get diagnosed in 2nd grade. I always say I'm so lucky and fortunate that it was found so early because I think the ability to like know that was so important. And I got the help that I needed to as early as possible, I felt like for me. And so it wasn't really until like high school that I like learned how to use my accommodations in school and like the importance of that. But that's really what allowed me to be successful in high school and then be able to go on to university and graduate with a degree in elementary education and special education. And so I don't think I would have been successful had I not had those accommodations. Like those were so important to me. Even like on ACT and SAT, like all of these things like are so vital for me to actually show what I know, because without those accommodations, I'm not.
Then can I just jump in to ask you, let's say a listener has no idea what dyslexia is or kind of what these accommodations are. Can you give us the 101 real quick?
Yeah, so it's a lot of people understand dyslexia as like struggling to read or spell, and it's like so much more than that, but that's definitely a huge bulk of it. So I would say that for dyslexia, like I read like everybody else, the words don't move around the page or anything like that, but my brain processes the information differently. And so because of that, when you're learning, it's not necessarily the way that everybody else learns. And so if it's tailored to the dyslexic mind, then anybody and everybody can learn. But if it's not specific to dyslexia, then it's kind of difficult for the child to pick it up, whatever that reading style is. Um, what else? What was the other part of the question?
Oh, yeah, just kind of that, what it is, and then what the accommodations are for you.
Yeah, so accommodations could be like for in school, I would say like extended time on test. I would test outside of the classroom. I would specifically have tutoring. I specifically did Orton Gillingham, which is like hugely beneficial and really, really helped me succeed in the ability to learn to read. And things like outside of school, like life in general, I will sometimes use Grammarly for grammar and stuff like that, spell check doesn't always understand what I'm trying to say. And then directions is actually something that like a lot of dyslexics can confuse right and left. And it's like I know my right and my left, but my brain will sometimes switch it up. So a lot of the times I will use maps all of the time. No matter if I have gone to the place a million times, I'm still going to use maps to kind of really help directional wise.
Gotcha. Did you feel in school that there were other people that could relate to this? Did the teachers know what to do? Kind of how did that work?
Yeah, so I'm so lucky to have one of my best friends who is more dyscalculic than anything like that. So it's like the math version
Mm.
basically of dyslexia is the easiest way to explain it. And so having her throughout my entire grade school career and even high school, we were really able to connect on that level of, we're struggling with these things. In high school specifically, like I would help her with math and she would help me with reading. And so
Nice.
it's just like super, super nice to have somebody who always got it. And we weren't by ourselves. There was a couple other girls when we were younger who would also get pulled out with the resource teacher, and we would kind of do some things separately. And then obviously we were in the classroom, I would say majority of the time.
Okay, great. And now I totally took you on a tangent from the kind of path question, but now go back to college and then how you ended up getting this desire to write a book.
Yeah, so in college, I think one of the biggest things that actually like sparked my desire to like learn more about dyslexia is the university I went to had a disability week and they did a panel of just different people and they'd asked me if I wanted to speak on dyslexia and I like had never spoke like publicly like that ever at any point and it wasn't that big of a event type of thing, but I think the ability to kind of sit on that panel and have an open discussion about what it's like being a dyslexic, I think was so nice to have because I don't think it's something that you get to share that often or something sometimes you're like scared to share, but that week was specifically about it, like about disabilities in general. But for me to be able to go in and talk about dyslexia, I later on did projects about dyslexia for my classes. So I really dove deep into it and I was like, okay, there's also strengths of dyslexia. Like I didn't know that like existed. And so it really was so beneficial for me to kind of know more about dyslexia and be able to give myself grace for the things that I'm struggling with dyslexia and understand it's just my dyslexia and I can move on and finding the accommodations or things to help with that. And then also the flip side of being able to see the strengths that come with dyslexia and kind of like know that those are the real things too. So
That's a great reminder too of whatever someone is struggling with, looking for what the strength is in that situation. So thank you for saying that. And the other thing I really loved hearing there is how you mentioned this panel that you were asked to be on. And just to shout that out again, to say it's never too small of an event and it's always worth doing the thing that you feel pulled to do. So whoever at your college decided we should do this panel, I don't know what they were thinking, but you said it wasn't that big of an event, but listen to the impact it had on you. So again, that reminder, we are all able to make a difference to someone else and to ourselves by saying yes, or by saying yes to ourselves by doing the thing. So kudos to you and kudos to whoever put that panel on.
Yeah, I can't remember who did it, but it truly like that was just one of the highlights of that year for sure.
Oh, that's great. And then did you start writing then, or did you start writing after that?
No, I really didn't start writing until around the time that I decided to write the book, really. Like it wasn't something I ever aspired to be. When I go in and I talk to students, I do ask them, like, raise your hand if you want to be an author today, yes or no. And some, it's usually one or two sometimes. Sometimes there's more, but it's usually a very small number. And then I say, raise your hand if no, and then majority of them raise their hand. And then I asked them what they thought my answer would have been in their age. So whether I'm speaking to fourth grade or whether I'm speaking to seventh grade. And some of them will, I would say sometimes it's like 50-50.
Yeah.
A majority of the time I would say that. And my answer was no. And so like, I am so happy to share that with them of like, I had no desire when I was your age to be an author, and life completely, took me down a different path. But it's cool for them, I think, to be able to understand that no matter what you want to do today, it doesn't mean that you can't do something later down the line. So I love to be able to share that with them.
And that's such a theme that keeps coming up with all my guests too, of that whatever you were doing at 18 or whatever you thought you were going to do at 10, it just has changed so much. And look at all that has come because of it, for the positive too, for sure. That's great. And so now tell us what it was like to publish a children's book or write it. Was it scary? Was it exciting? Like how you brought your friend into it?
Yeah, I think having my friend in it was essential. I think, being able to push through that fear that together, I think was huge. But I think especially for our first book, we had such a specific vision of like wanting to start those conversations in classrooms, and we knew the importance of that and the impact that it could have. And so I think any of the barriers that we hit, we just knew like this is our ultimate goal, like this is what we want to hit. So it was easier to push those down and to continue to push on and just strive to get to publish. But actually that book we did the fastest because it was COVID too, so a lot of people were home. We started that, and I asked her to be the illustrator in March of 2020, and the book came out in October of 2020.
Wow.
So it was a very fast track for sure.
Did you think it was one and done, or did you have a plan for more from the start?
I don't think we knew what we were really getting into when we started with the first book. But I think in like marketing that first book, it was people were like, "Oh, you should write this one. Oh, you should write this one." And I think people were just so excited to have a picture book about, a neurodiversity that people were just like, "Yes, like continue, like move on." And I think that really helped us like, okay, there's definitely a need for this, and we loved the process, and we learned so much through the first book that it's definitely helped us. We have two that are currently, she is working on illustrations for two more. So the next ones took significantly longer, but the process kind of remains the same of, editing and going through all of the copy edits. And then just the editing from even the first draft is never the final draft by any means. So there's just a lot of the process, and in peeking behind the doors of what it's really like has been crazy to see because it's not anything that I would have ever expected.
Wow, a lot harder, a lot easier, or just different?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think some things are definitely like easier than I thought they would be, but then there's other things that I would like, oh, that's so simple. And it's like, no, like there's so much more to that element than I ever could have expected.
Wow. You know what? Now that I have a son, I'm thrown into the children book world, and well, first of all, just when you think there's so many children's books, how could you need more? You realize all the gaps there are in those books. So I think it's so amazing that you saw one of those gaps, you saw that need, and you took action to fill that need. And the relatability factor in books is so huge. Books, movies, and we're doing a great job as a society of increasing it, but it's still, there's still a long way to go. So I think that's really cool. Do you want to tell us maybe a story about a child that you've interacted with, or a parent since writing the book that it's made an impact on?
Yeah, there's like five different stories that came to mind as you were talking. Like there's so many things that have happened since then. But one of my favorite is I actually connected with somebody in Australia through a social media like talking site or whatever. And I was just talking with her and she said, "Oh, I wrote a book with my daughter about dyslexia." And I was like, "You should publish it. Like the more the merrier. Like we just need more books about dyslexia." And she ended up actually publishing it in Australia, which was so cool. And she even put me in the acknowledgments, which was like so not necessary, but like the most amazing thing. And so I think it's just like those little things. Like she is now written a second book about eczema for her son. Like, so she's doing fabulous work on herself for Australia. And then even locally, I've had multiple times where I've gone and talked to kids, and I don't think you should use a children's book as a diagnostic tool at all, ever, right? Like that, there's so much going into diagnosing for dyslexia. But there have been kids who have spoken up and said, like, I think I might be dyslexic based off not only the book, but also my presentation and what I talk about with students. And whether they were diagnosed or not, just the opportunity for them to
Yeah.
speak up and know, like, it's okay to
Awareness.
say this. Yeah.
Oh, great stories. And this is just something I love asking all guests. What is the most surprising thing about where your life is today?
Ooh. Um, Surprising thing. I think growing up and struggling to read so much, if you said that I was going to be an author growing up, I would have never believed you in a million years. And so I think just I'm in such a different place than I ever thought that I would be. My mom was speaking with a couple of my like former classmates from very young. They've known me since maybe three until probably high school. So they've seen a lot of me throughout my childhood. And they at one time were speaking with my mom saying, like, I can't believe what she's doing. Like I just never would have expected her to go and speak and do this stuff based off how I was as a kid. So I think it's just a surprise in general of just everything about life right now, for sure.
Well, how cool is that? And congrats. This is just really great what you've done and in such a short amount of time as well. So one last question. What advice, if any, do you have for
Mm.
someone who does feel like, oh, I might be able to fill a need, but I don't know, is it worth it? Or I don't know where to start.
Yeah, I think anytime that you can do something to fill that gap that you're seeing, do it. Whether it's something small, whether it's something big, because that small impact can have a bigger impact for somebody else, which then can make another impact for somebody else. And just the domino effect, you'll never know how big of a domino that you're pushing over because of maybe something very small that you did. So any gap that you see in the world that you know needs to be filled, fill it, even if it's just one shovel. That'll be enough to make the impact.
It's a good visual. Even if it's just one shovel, do it. Yes.
Yeah.
Abigail, thank you so much. Please tell everybody where they can find you and your books and all those good things online.
Yeah, currently our books are on Amazon. We are definitely going to be able to hopefully in the future sell them off of our own site as well. But you can find me on Instagram. It's the Passage Press. And it's also Abigail.Griebelbauer, but you can find that through the Passage Press. I'm sure that's easier to spell for most people. But Instagram's probably the best place for sure.
Great. Sounds good, Abigail. And we'll have those links in the show notes. But thanks so much for being here. It was great talking to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey there, Kate here. With it being January, it's a time when a lot of us get a renewed energy for health and fitness goals. But if you're feeling overwhelmed by what to do or how to start, then I invite you to check out the 101 series, created by yours truly. As in another part of my life, I am a certified fitness professional. The 101 series breaks down common workouts and classes in 3 one-hour videos to take out the overwhelm that can come when stepping into a workout class or gym and give you the power to work out safely and efficiently. We are all busy. We don't have time to waste on injury or doing exercises incorrectly. Whether you go through one or all 3 of the 101 courses, you will be equipped with a wealth of knowledge, broken down in sensible, easy to digest ways. And you'll have access to the course for as long as you need it, pausing, rewinding as often as you need. From my home to yours, nothing fancy, just you and me, lessening the overwhelm and opening doors for your fitness goals. bebykate.com/the101 series. That's BEBYKATE.com/the 101 series. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this helpful, a 5-star review, like, or comment means the world to me. And if you found insight in this episode, chances are someone else will too. Share with a friend to give them a boost today. Until next time, I'm Kate Cherichello-Tente, and this was Be the Good with Kate.